Welcome to Working the Case. We're talking today with Julie Nichols, Administrative Caseworker for Child Protective Services in Monroe County.
I'm Julie Nichols. I'm an Administrative Caseworker with Child and Family Services for Monroe County.
And how long have you been working in this field?
So I have worked in Child Protective Services for 17 years for Monroe County. I actually started working as an intern in my Bachelor's of Social Work program through SUNY Rockport. I had an internship on what was then called the student team. I did that for my senior year of my undergrad, and then took the civil service exam, and then started with the county as a caseworker 17 years ago.
Talk, if you will, because obviously you haven't been a caseworker all this time. You're now an administrative caseworker. Talk about how your career has progressed and how it has changed your responsibilities.
Okay, so I was a caseworker in investigations for the first probably 4 to 5 years of my career with Monroe County. It was, challenging, interesting, all of those things you hear about, not only just kind of a first job out of college, but just in human services in general, right? Working across the community with a variety of families and clients. And at that point, I was just out of college, so I was also kind of learning the professional world. Around, 2008, 2009, I took a civil service exam to become a senior caseworker. And at that point, the county was working on Project SAVE. So we were able to add a lot of teams to kind of our division. And at that point, that's when I got promoted to a senior caseworker. Interestingly enough, the promotion that I got was to a brand new team that didn't even exist yet. It was a Child Protective Services training unit. So I really got to get in on the ground floor of developing training for new workers. And I was kind of really close to that population still because I'd only been a caseworker for a short period of time. I was relatively, young in my career with the county as well as kind of my professional career out of college. So in my new role as a senior caseworker for a training unit, that's when I really got involved in developing new workers, right? We would hire these groups of new workers, and it was me and my supervisor's role, along with some experienced workers, to provide a training curriculum and training experience to new caseworkers coming in the front door. So it went from, I kind of evolved from as a worker working directly with families to then being a senior caseworker and working to be able to prepare new staff for their direct work with families. Through my time there, I worked on the training team as a senior for about 4 years, at which point I got a promotion to a supervising caseworker. And I stayed on the training team as the supervisor. And again, really that was about how do I develop that training team to be able to support all kinds of new groups of caseworkers coming in the front door. We've evolved and changed our training methods throughout the years. And we really try to provide a great new experience for new caseworkers that are just starting their career here. And sometimes we get workers right out of college, just like I was. Other times we get new workers that come to the field that have worked in a variety of other types of human service jobs. And it's really kind of acclimating them to the role of casework. One of the things that I loved about my role in leadership for Monroe County is that, I really believe in that parallel process. So I approach the workers that I'm trying to develop the same way that I want our workers to kind of approach the families and the community that we're working with, right? We work to be able to provide respect to everyone. We're honest in our approach with families. We work to engage families and our staff in what the best course of action for that family or that worker is going to be to help people to be successful. In my career here, even though the population that I'm directly working with and for might look different, as a supervisor, I'm serving the caseworkers on my team to be able to serve the families that ultimately Monroe County works to be able to support and serve.
So talk about the promotion process, because, you said, then I was promoted to senior, but it's not that easy, right? I mean, somebody just doesn't reach out and say, Julie, we want you to be a senior. Right?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So just like when you take the civil service exam to become a caseworker, at each different promotional level, there's also an exam that you take. So after you've been a caseworker for a few years, you have the opportunity to take the senior caseworker exam. Similarly, you get a score and you get on a list, and when there's a vacancy in that position, the administration at the county will then be able to identify who they can interview for that potential vacancy. So one of the things that's really important in the work that we do is that you're working hard and you're putting your best foot forward, because not only does your civil service score go into that, but your reputation and your experience with the county also goes into promotional opportunities. So it really is a career, right? You're able to get different experiences across different teams and different functions to be able to broaden your skill base. And you can make those lateral moves so that you are a more well-rounded worker, so that when promotional opportunities are available, you have that skill set. You've developed those skills and capacity and knowledge in different functions. Same thing with the supervisor. After you've been a senior caseworker for a period of time, then you can take an exam to be able to be on a supervising caseworker promotional list. And same thing, your skill and your experience and your knowledge and your civil service exam score goes into then that next step about being able to be selected to be promoted to a supervisor.
And how are each of those jobs different? In other words, senior versus supervisor versus what you are now, an administrative caseworker. Am I right that each position has a little bit more management in it?
Absolutely. So caseworkers, I really say that caseworkers are kind of like the backbone of the work that we do, right? They're kind of like boots on the ground kind of function. There are workers who are going into the families' homes and the community. They're responding to new reports. They're case managing families that are active with our family court system. Seniors, that's that next level up. So senior caseworkers are doing some of that direct work, but they're also leading staff on their team. They're also kind of responsible for development of the staff on their team and kind of some of those higher level casework decisions. Supervisors are then the next level up from there. Supervisors are responsible for a whole team of workers that they have, including a senior and other caseworkers. And they're also responsible for some of those higher level decisions, for communicating protocol and policy that comes from administration down in implementation on their teams. And also kind of they're responsible for kind of building a team and that team culture. And they have some autonomy in terms of being able to set up a culture on your team that is, supportive and works towards developing staff. And then again, we work in a team atmosphere, and the soup and senior really get to create that atmosphere on their unit that we help out each other, right? And that at the end of the day, it's really about the families that we serve. So how do we use the resources on our unit and across units to best do that?
Okay. I assume that as you advance through these positions, your compensation improves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So with each promotional step that you take, there's a bump in compensation, and we're part of the union. So supervisors, seniors, and casework level are all included in the union that we have through the county. And there's a union contract with different steps in the raises and then different steps at each level of promotion.
Okay. And how do you find, now you're an administrative caseworker. Could you describe your job and what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So the administrative casework position is a step above the supervisory level. So what I'm responsible for at this point in time is I have 4 investigation teams that I oversee. So each one has a supervisor, and I'm kind of the next level up from there. So I meet with the supervisors regularly to discuss not only challenging situations, work situations, case situations, family situations, but the development of each of their workers and the development of that supervisor in their position as a leader and manager. So I have 4 teams of investigation supervisors that I oversee. I'm also over our training unit. So again, that's a fairly large team with 1 supervisor and 2 seniors. And I coordinate with staff development around hiring and training of new staff to get new classes and cohorts in the front door. And then I also have another team, our intake after hours unit, that I'm also the administrator over. So again, each of these teams has a direct supervisor. And my work is to, develop protocol and policies and procedures that not only that are directed from OCFS, which is our governing body, but within our own agency. What are things in Monroe County that we want to do in terms of quality work, and then how do we disseminate that information to teams, and then monitor for quality assurance, and then gathering feedback from all levels of staff to say what's going well in your job, what are things that we as at the administrative level can look at to improve in terms of process, policy, procedure.
So what's your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of the job. I early on in my career, when I really got to work with new staff coming in the front door, I found that I really love the work of developing staff, whether it's at the casework level, and now I get to work to develop my supervisors. I really like to be able to get to know people and understand their strengths, areas that they want to grow, and help them to kind of create plans to become better versions of whatever role they're in, whether they're a caseworker or a supervisor. How can I help them to be an even better leader, an even better supervisor? How can I help and create trainings and practices and protocols so that caseworkers can do the best work they can do, become the best version of themselves to then really ultimately serve the families. I really have a passion for training and development at all different levels. And in my role as an administrator, I really get to influence some of the trainings that we either develop and bring to the agency, or even delivering some trainings myself to staff. So I think that's one of my passions in this job. The other function that I get to participate in as an administrator is I really get to reach outside of the agency to develop relationships with mandated reporters in the community, and other professions that we interface with regularly. We interface with the hospitals, we interface with the schools, and I get to really reach out and help educate the community about what Child Protective Services is about. And I think that's essential, right? We're all connected in this community. There's so many services and systems that kind of function somewhat independently, and we really need to understand and know what each of these services in our community are doing. We're all serving the same population. How do we make sure that we understand each other's roles and functions? And in my current capacity as an administrative caseworker, I really get to do a lot of that, and I really enjoy that.
So, if you had an opportunity, and I think you occasionally do, to talk with people who are considering casework as a career, what kinds of things would you tell them to say, hey, this is a good job and a good career? What would you say? Okay. So interestingly enough, part of what I do in my role currently is when we have new workers that took the civil service exam who are interested in the job, we have kind of a presentation that they get to come and see and hear a little bit more about the job. And one of the very first things that I say is that this is a hard job. CPS is not for the faint of heart. It's a challenging job, but it is an incredibly rewarding job. We make decisions every day about if children can remain in a home with their families, with their parents. And that's a very heavy decision to make. And I say, we make decisions that at the end of the day, we go home to our families, but the decisions that we make every day at work impact individuals, children, and families for the rest of their lives. So we don't do that lightly. That being said, these are important decisions that we make because a lot of the decisions that we make keep children safe, and sometimes keep them alive, but also the families that we serve, also the parents and the caretakers. We offer services and supports to families who are sometimes in a bad situation. And to be that catalyst for change for a family, to see a family who is struggling become successful and thrive and be able to raise and support healthy children within their home and in their environment, there's nothing more rewarding than that. And to really be a part of that and to be your legacy and your career and your life's work, I really don't think that there are many more rewarding careers in terms of being able to support your community, make a decent living on your own, to be able to support your family as well, because we all know at the end of the day that's important too.
but really it's impactful. And I think to always remember in this work that you might not always know the impact that you had in the moment, right? But to know that you do make an impact and you do make a difference. I think a lot of times as kids we think about what do we want to be when we grow up, and you think about a career that you want to really make a difference. And if you have the skill and ability and talent and heart for this job, you will make a difference.
So is that what keeps you in the job? I mean, obviously, you're an experienced social worker. You've been in doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
There are other opportunities for you. You could move from the county and do something else. But what keeps you there?
It is. I'm a mission-driven individual, right? I believe in the mission of keeping children safe and families supported. Not only that, you are working along other people who are passionate and compassionate towards the families that we work with, and towards each other, right? We're kind of in it together. So not only is it the mission and the families that we serve that I believe in, but the teamwork and the camaraderie and the relationships you make throughout your career here. And it's not only the relationships you make with your coworkers and your peers, but even with some of the providers that we work with in the community, some of our preventive services and some of our school districts and things like that. You really make relationships with people who all believe in your mission. And you know, there's not any one person that can serve a mission this big. So it's really that teamwork and that camaraderie and being able to say that, yeah, we're all in this together and it's worth it and it's hard and it's challenging, but we're going to keep doing it. And I've had great leaders in this field as well. There's certainly times in a job that's stressful and that there's so much trauma. There's certainly times where you want to take that step back and say, "Ugh, what am I doing this for? There's a million other jobs I could try to go and find." But then when you really start to look and you really start to think about it, there aren't that many jobs that you can make a difference, that you can make the same difference that you can make here, right? You can make a big difference in families' lives, and that's important, and that keeps you going. But additionally, you know, there's so many different functions within Child and Family Services. There's CPS investigations, there's CPS management, there's adult protective services, there's foster care, there's home finding. So even if you kind of feel like you've put your time in one and you want to try something different, there's always a new challenge that you can take on, whether it's lateraling to a different function or taking a civil service exam and being promoted and having a whole new realm of responsibility. It's ever changing, so you're constantly learning and growing.
Talk for a minute, if you would, because I think when we talk about caseworkers, because most of the people who are hired as caseworkers come in CPS investigations, because that's where the need is greatest. But talk about those other areas,
Okay.
And how they differ and how the work differs.
Yeah, so all of the different areas kind of support and build on each other. So the way that the CPS world works is if a report is received through the state central registry, it goes through the first touch point in our agency is our intake unit. So that's a unit, intake, and then we have an after hours unit that's attached to that. Those cases get transferred to an investigation unit, a CPS investigation unit. Based on the nature of the workflow, some of those investigations are going to progress to family court, and then those cases and families are going to be transferred to a CPS management unit. We have children that are placed in foster care, and then there's a function and a role for a foster care unit to step in. And what foster care does is they support the investigation staff in finding a foster home for children coming into care, and they help to be able to stabilize that placement right up front. It's a really traumatic and challenging time when kids come into foster care, as you can imagine. So we have a foster care unit that's devoted to that. And then we also have attached kind of on the back of the foster care unit, we have a home finding unit. And what that home finding unit does is they recruit and certify and support foster parents to be able to become foster parents, to go through the proper trainings, and then they support them in the challenges that it can be to be a foster parent, the struggles that foster parents can go through in trying to make sure that children are safe and secure in their home. So then we also have an adoption unit. So at the point where children are freed for adoption, if reunification isn't possible, our adoption unit then works to be able to secure forever homes for foster children who are now pre-adoptive children or adoptive children. We also have a team called Youth Opportunities Unit. So there are sometimes that older children might be freed for adoption, but they don't want to be adopted, and they have a goal of what we call APLA. So it's similar to an independent living goal. So we have a U team that really helps these older teens to be able to stabilize themselves to progress into adulthood. We also have a residential services unit that oversees children placed in different facilities across the state, really. So we have a variety of different units. We have an adult protective unit as well. So if we have adults who are over 18 who are in a vulnerable position and there's fear of neglect or abuse, we have an adult protective services unit that can work with and assist that population of our community. We have a training unit, like I just referenced before as well, to be able to onboard and train our newest staff. So there's a lot of different units across the agency that, again, have slightly different functions and more skill and knowledge to be able to learn and acquire. There's never, and I think part of the reason that we're divided into all these functions is because there's so much to the job. There's so much to learn and there's so much to know that we have specialized units that are going to be able to do each piece of the work.
One last question, because we're almost out of time. We hear a lot about CPS, and a lot of what we hear through the media, online, etc., is negative. There's this perception among parts of the community that CPS are cops who kind of run roughshod over the families they deal with. I mean, I've known you for long enough, and I know lots of caseworkers, and I know that's not true. But tell our viewers why that's not true, and why that really is kind of an unfair rap on caseworkers and on CPS.
Okay, so again, doing this job for 17 years, I'm sure that there's been numerous times where you're in conversation with someone and they say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And I say, "I work for Child Protective Services." And I'm proud of that fact, so I do say that. And oftentimes people's first response will be, "Wow, that must be tough." And I say, "It is tough, but you get to meet a lot of really good families in a challenging situation. And maybe you can help them to kind of overcome that." Because that's what we do. We meet a lot of families, and even our own families. We've had challenging situations come up before. We meet a lot of really good people in this work, a lot of people who are trying their best. And sometimes all it takes is just a word of encouragement. And whether that's through a CPS report and a CPS worker helping connect someone to a service to help a family function better, maybe that's what it takes for that family to never have to come across our system again. And also I say, you can't measure what you prevent. So a lot of times we see the statistics that we see in the news, in the media, are about bad things that occurred. But you know what? Maybe we prevented 100 other really bad things from happening to children or families because of our intervention and because of our action, but you can't measure what didn't happen, right? So, I talk about there's a lot of really good people who work in this field. We're here because we believe in keeping families together and supported, and we really do everything we can to accomplish that. But there's limited control that we have, and there's confidentiality in this work too. So unfortunately, we don't get to go on the news and tell these great success stories, right? And nor would I want to, because families have the right to confidentiality. And just like, everyone here, I'm sure you want your families to have their confidentiality. We want the families that we work with and serve to also have their confidentiality respected. So, when you hear stories and fantastical things in the media, I just ask that you take a step back and think that, on the other end of that, there might be a CPS worker who's really doing everything they can to support a family. And know that there's always more than meets the eye to the work that we do.
I think you and I were talking earlier about the percentage of CPS cases that actually result in the child being removed from the home. Do you recall what that percentage is?
Well, I think it's around 2%. So again, that's very minimal. In addition, I know we've talked before about even the percent of cases that are actually indicated, meaning that there's evidence that abuse or neglect occurred, that's only around 25%, right? So again, a lot of the families that we're working with are in a hard situation, and there's a CPS report, and we get to step in and intervene and hopefully connect families to a service that can really support them in their functioning. Most families that we interface with, there aren't abuse or neglect issues.
We've been talking today with Julie Nichols, Administrative Caseworker for Child Protective Services in Monroe County, New York. This has been Working the Case.